Hey you guys, so I'm Danny the Teach and this is Beauty Manifested, and today we're gonna do something super duper fun. So yesterday I taught a really fun herb workshop at an event that I attended, and it went so wonderful. I felt really good about it, and I figured why not get on and share this information with my little YouTube community. You never know who might want to learn this, and I just want to be able to give something. And also, I felt super proud of my lesson plan, so of course I want to be able to use this more than once. I do have a couple more workshops coming up in the DFW area, but like, I'm just so passionate about this. I want the whole world to be able to hear it and start something. So the way that I started the class was with a little bit of storytelling, and basically I just got to connect with everyone who was there and see like what their garden story was. So for example, like it could be that their grandmother had a garden and they used to help her in the garden. She used to always grow roses. Quite a few people said, oh, well, I bought a plant and it died, so I suck at plants. Or it could be that they actually started like a whole garden. Like one guy, he said he built a raised bed and it was his first time and everything was doing okay for a while, and then it just like dried up and died, and it happens. So basically, like, what I got from that is a lot of people do have some sort of interest in gardening. They just might feel like they don't have the ability to do it. And of course, some people don't have the desire to do it, but at least from the event yesterday, and just like most of the people that I talked to really do like it. I know not everyone likes bugs, but I just feel like if they knew what gardening was and kind of how it worked and like all the benefits and the pros, like all the good parts that come about it, then they would be more inclined to do it. Especially like the amount of women who take care of houseplants, like a crazy amount of houseplants, and they don't grow anything edible is absolutely shocking and crazy to me. So I'm getting on here. I'm going to do this herb workshop for you guys because that is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, at least to me. For them that works, but I want to share my point of view and what I do, and then that way if I could even inspire one person to grow an edible plant, then that would be fantastic for me. So I am going to read a little bit because I worked hard on this outline and I'm really proud of it. So I'm going to actually kind of read what I have. So in order to get clarity on my vision, I did do a who, what, when, where, and why. So the who, which is very important, is your gardening experience is between you and your plants, okay? You get to pour your worldview into the way you garden. I'm going to teach you the methods that I use, but definitely 100 different gardeners may share 100 different things, and it is part of your journey to find what works for you. And one of the girls mentioned yesterday, and I thought it was so wonderful and fantastic. She was like, with your garden, you just have to experiment with things, and you never know what's gonna work out. She's like, sometimes I do trials, like I might have a plant over here and a plant over here and see which one does better. And she's like, I'm a very experimental person, and that's what I like about gardening. So I love that gardening brings out more of who you are. So the who is, it's you and it's your plants. It's an individual journey. It's a commitment that you make. For me, it's part of my inner work. It's part of my self-care. It's part of my spiritual journey. Like gardening, I'm just a gardener. Like this is who I am. My name is Danny the Siege, and I'm a gardener. Period. The what. In this class, we will be discussing herbs specifically. I am of the opinion that herbs have the most significant impact on your health and thus should be prioritized. They are also the most versatile to use in the kitchen. They also tend to be the easiest to grow. This will be a great place to start if you are still a baby gardener. So, exactly what I said. I mean, I think that herbs are just the best thing to do. They're easy to grow. A lot of them are perennial. They'll come back for you every year. They'll grow pretty much everywhere. I mean, there's so many different herbs. Of course, like in Texas, it gets super duper hot. So there's herbs that can grow in the summer, and there's herbs that can grow literally all winter long. And it just depends what you're going to do. I think I don't grow things in my windowsill, and I wouldn't recommend it because I just feel like it doesn't get as much light as it needs. You could get a little grow light, But basically, there are people who grow herbs indoors. Like, you could grow it in the windowsill, or you could grow it under a grow light. And literally, they have like little grow lights. Like, you can just get a little table lamp, preferably one of those ones that, like, you know, like a desk lamp, and you can like point it at things. And then you can get a grow light bulb from Home Depot. They're like $6 or something. And then have your basil plant, and then just set it up like that. Like, there's literally nothing stopping you from being able to grow some herbs. There's nothing. If you wanted to, you would. Period. The next is the wind. So there is an Asian proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. If you have no desire to grow a garden, then I would start there. How can you create more of a connection with the food that you consume and the planet that you inhabit? And that would just be something to maybe journal on, meditate on. I mean, like, if you really have no desire to garden, it could definitely be a valid reason. Like, maybe you used to garden and you don't like it. Maybe you actually grew up on a farm and now you relate gardening to like hard labor and like chores and just something that you don't want to do. Like, I don't want to do the dishes. I still have to do dishes a lot of times. But, you know, a lot of people hire a house cleaner because they just don't like cleaning. Whereas some people actually love cleaning their house, and they look at it as kind of like a meditative experience, and they get to connect to their home and, you know, things like that. So it really just depends. I know that gardening isn't for everybody. Some people really feel the luxury of being able to go to a high-end grocery store and just pick out whatever they want. But for me, like I said, gardening is a part of who I am. It's a part of who I am becoming, and it's really big. Definitely, as I progress through life and my bank account expands and grows, I do see myself hiring. Even now, I do have like arborists who come out and help me with the trees, and like, you know, there's some things that I just don't want to do. Like, I don't want to use a chainsaw, so I do hire help. But definitely in the future, I could see myself hiring maybe like a landscaper, a gardener, and then, yeah, because like all things, like even like say for my business, like I'm very passionate about my business. I love doing business, but of course there's aspects of it that really I don't like and that feel like work to me, and there's just are not my jam. And so I can outsource those things. I can hire someone to do those things, etc., etc. For me in my garden, the funny part is I love working in my garden. I love caring for my plants, and I don't really like the harvesting. Like, that's actually like my least favorite part. That's why I love herbs, because I can just grab a handful of it and throw it in my soup. Grab a handful of it. I do a lot of infused waters, put it in my water, grab a handful of it, put it in my bath. Like, there's not a lot of prep. But when I'm growing my tomatoes and my peppers and my onions, like, I don't really like the harvest process. It's just not my cup of tea. Yeah, you have to like clean the vegetables, and it's just not my favorite thing. So if I could hire someone, I would. So just ask yourself that. The question was, how can you create more of a connection with the food that you consume and the planet that you inhabit? And the answer doesn't have to be gardening. The next question would be, when do you feel closest to God? If you do have a desire to grow a garden, why haven't you started yet? And that would be a perfect question, because if you ask me, the time would be to start now. And this herb class is perfect timing because it's spring. In Texas, we've already had our last frost date, but if you live in the north or a colder climate, spring is coming up quick, and it's time to get your plants in the ground. So if you're going to start, now is the time. Where there are many ways to grow herbs. Herbs do great in containers, and this is a wonderful option for people who rent. The benefits of having a raised bed or in the ground garden are that many herbs are perennial, and in the permanent bed you can easily plant your herbs once and have them come back every year. I actually did a video on this channel maybe a week ago about the mint that I grow, and how I literally planted it 5 years ago, and I just have an unlimited supply of mint. My oregano comes back every year. My peppermint comes back every year. I have sweet mint and peppermint. My rosemary comes back every year. In Texas, actually, the rosemary loves it. It thrives. It will grow into a whole bush. So you could buy one rosemary. And I've been planting, I've been starting it by seed, and it's actually super easy to start by seed. So you could spend $3 on a pack of rosemary seeds, start it by seed, grow it up, and then literally have a forever lifetime supply of rosemary. And it smells so good. And it actually looks beautiful. In Texas, they use it as a landscape plant outside of a lot of like commercial buildings just all throughout the city. So you could even plant it in your front yard and just let it like do what it does. Yeah. So basically for the where, you're either going to do it in a container, or you're going to do it in a raised bed, or you're going to do it in the ground. And raised bed is basically a container on the ground. It's like a container with an open bottom, basically, but a lot bigger. Yeah, those are the options. You could also do like hydroponic, and like they have all kinds of vertical gardens. There's like all, well, that's still container gardening. They have all kinds of crazy things that they do. I don't do all of that. I feel like that's less of a connection to nature, but whatever. Science is going to do what it does. The why. This is a question that only you can answer, but I will share my why with you. Gardening is a part of who I am. Gardening is who I am. My grandparents grew gardens, and so I grew up around plants. When I began my personal development / spiritual awakening, this was accompanied by a desire to live the healthiest and happiest life possible. So my dad helped me to build a garden here in Texas. There are so many lessons I have learned from my garden about resilience and about grace. When I am in my garden, I feel most connected to the divine and unconditional love that God offers to us. Life moves too fast sometimes, and so I find ways to slow things down, and the garden allows me to do that. So I garden for health, and I garden for serenity, and I garden for wisdom. And those are my reasons why. I feel my healthiest when my garden is thriving. I feel my most peaceful when my garden is thriving. And I feel that I receive so much wisdom while I'm in my garden. So for the how-to, it's like a simple, easy step, super duper easy. You guys can do this. It will not take you long. All you have to do is decide. And this journey will change you. This decision will change you. All you have to do is decide. So this first step is to select your container and your medium. For a plant to grow, it needs light, water, soil, and love. You are love, and the sun will always shine on you. So those two mediums are free. So option 1 is container gardening. The pros of container gardening is that you have control over the soil. It's light, movable, easily accessible. The con is that it dries out quickly, but if you are willing to water every day, that is okay. And I mean, the pro is like, if you live somewhere like, I'm from Michigan, so that's the example I'll give. Michigan summers don't get super duper hot, like maybe 80, 85. I think I haven't been to Michigan in a while, but it's not super hot. Here in Texas, it gets like 110 degrees for like weeks and weeks and weeks. So it gets super duper hot. But if you live somewhere in Michigan, it's only 80, 85. Container gardening can be really easy for you because you won't have to water that much. It's not going to soil. It's not going to dry out that much. Whereas in Texas, I don't container garden really at all. I do have a few like very big containers, I think like 20 gallons, that I'll put some things in. And even those, I have to water them every single day because it's intense. One girl who I talked to yesterday at the event, she probably has some smaller containers. She said in the summertime, she waters 3 times a day. I have a job, like I can't, and I travel and I have friends, I have a social life, like I have a busy life. I can't be watering 3 times a day. I just can't. But yeah. Other than that though, container gardening is a wonderful option. It really is. So now the second option, which is the one that I prefer, is in the ground, like a actual, like literally into the ground, or in a raised bed. Now you cannot just, I'll get to that part. Okay. So you can order a raised bed online, or you can watch a YouTube video and then pick up the supplies from Home Depot to build your own raised bed. That's what I did. It was pretty easy. Or at least in the beginning. So my dad built my first raised bed out of wood. from Home Depot. But now, just last year, I upgraded the beds to, and I have another wood bed that I ordered online, but I upgraded to like these metal beds that I got off Amazon, literally. And I like them because they come in all different shapes and sizes, and then you can kind of like make it fit into the space that you have. Because where I have my garden, well, I have a few different gardens throughout my yard, but the main vegetable garden, it's in like a weird triangle place, like against the house. So yeah, basically I like ordering online because you can pick all kinds of different shapes. But if your dad or your husband or your brother, whoever is really good with like wood and stuff like that, then that would be awesome. And I loved my wood bed. Yeah. The pros of the in-ground or the raised bed is that it's a more permanent option and it's going to require less work in the long run. So the medium is going to be the soil. The soil is pretty important. You absolutely cannot just dig a hole in the ground, stick the plant in there and say, grow, damn it. Especially here in Texas, like we have clay soil, but literally anywhere. Like no. If you plant a tree, then that could work actually. Like you can just dig, especially if it's like a strong tree, a tree that's native to where you live. Like you could do that with a tree, but not with a vegetable. The soil is just going to be too hard, especially if you live in like a suburban area. Usually to build the houses and clear out the land to build the houses, they ran over it with like big, heavy tractors and like heavy machinery, and it's compacted the soil like a lot. And you don't want compacted soil. You want light, fluffy, airy soil so that the roots of your plant can breathe. So that's the main reason that you wouldn't want to just dig a hole in your compacted soil. If you even try to dig a hole, you're going to see like this soil is really freaking hard. And if you can barely get a shovel into it, how do you think the roots are going to be able to spread through it? Like, it's just not going to work. So that's what you're not going to do. If you do want to do a in-ground bed, and I am experimenting with in-ground beds now. I did my first one last year and now I have two. You have to I added expanded shell in there. You have to like till it. You have to add a lot of compost. Like you have to add a lot of stuff and like mix it and mix it and mix it so that at least the top 6 inches can be that soft, airy soil. And like they say you can build, it's a process. Like it takes years to build up your soil. So I've started the process, but that soil is really, it's not the best. But it's super exciting because it's worth the investment. And once you've been building up the soil for years, it's like the best. Having the plants that close to the ground, they have the most access to water, the most access to nutrients. In Texas, we have clay soil, and they say the clay is like full of minerals. So as those minerals break down and they soften with the compost and everything, the plants are able to access that. And there's like so many worms, just like when you do it in the ground. So those are some things that I really, really like and appreciate about in-ground gardening, but raised bed gardening is my preferred option. Yes. So what would be an act of love would be sourcing the highest quality soil that you have available to you. I think that you should go to a local like family owned nursery. Talk to the people in the store about soil biology and see what they know. And if they sound pretty knowledgeable, I would buy soil from them. Like it doesn't have to be that deep. If they have soil, this is like organic versus non-organic, I would just get the non-organic one. If it's significantly cheaper, it's gonna be fine as long as they didn't add a bunch of chemical fertilizers to it. Like usually that's just a labeling thing. It's like they'll also sell you seeds that are like organic seeds, but all the seeds are organic. Like that makes no sense. So don't get scammed. You can probably get the not organic soil. You can get the organic if it gives you peace of mind, but it's usually not a big difference. You just want to get a good high quality soil. You don't want to get soil from Home Depot. You don't want to get soil from Lowe's. You want to go to a local nursery, somewhere that actually specializes in like flowers and vegetables and things like that. Not Home Depot, not Lowe's. A local, preferably family owned nursery. Callaway's is okay. I actually like Callaway's soil, but there's probably better. And why not support a small business, right? Okay. So next thing, this is the last step. So you chose your container. You got some good high quality soil. And then you will, you know what, and you do have to have light. I will say that. So just in case, if you live in a house, isn't going to be as much. But listen, so I live in the northern hemisphere, and so the sun comes from the south. So the place that's going to get the absolute most sun is a south facing garden. Okay. So I have a couple of gardens. So I have a garden, and it's on the south side of my house, and the side garden gets sun almost all day. And that's more than 6 hours. I'm talking, it's getting like 10 hours of sun. And then I have a garden over here on the kind of the west side of the house, and it doesn't get the east sun. So it gets the second half of the day. So it gets at least 6 hours of sun. It's still considered full sun, but it's getting afternoon sun. And if you know, like 1 to 3 is the hottest time of the day. That's when the sun is most intense. So if you have your plants getting that afternoon sun, you're going to have to water a lot, and some things might get burned up because it's going to be super hot. And this is specifically for Texas, where it gets really, really hot and really, really intense. But in general, like if you have a south facing garden that's getting afternoon sun, it's going to get a lot of sun, which is good. You want a lot of sun. If you have an east facing garden, that's like the sunrise, like a softer sun, you know, it's usually cooler in the mornings. Beautiful, beautiful. I would say like that's like ideal conditions. 6 to 8 hours of morning sun. If you're doing fruit trees, I know this is a herb workshop, but yeah. So for your herbs, you can do morning sun, you can do afternoon sun, you can do all day sun. It doesn't really matter as long as it's getting full sun. And some herbs can even grow in part sun. So at least 4 hours of sun a day. If you live in an apartment, I just pull out my compass and I see. If you have a north-facing balcony, it's going to be tough, but because herbs are herbs, you should still be able to grow them. Just put them in a nice sunny spot, and all should be well. But if you live in a south-facing balcony, just take that into consideration, because you're going to have to water more often than the person with the north-facing balcony, because you're getting that like intense direct sunlight. So that's the only thing to take in consideration with the light. So you took into consideration the light, you picked out your container, or you built your raised bed, you filled it with high quality soil from a local nursery, and now you get to pick your plants. Now, while you're at the local nursery, of course, it's going to be super duper easy to either just pick up some transplants that they already have started. They usually run $3 to $5 each, and you can pick out the plants that you want. Or if you want, you can pick out some seeds. So also have seeds there. You can pick out seeds in order to start them. The seed starting is a whole nother journey in its own. So if you're a baby gardener, this is your first time, you don't have a lot of experience, definitely just buy the plants. It's going to be worth it. And like I said, like I bought my rosemary plant, like I actually inherited a rosemary plant from the past owner who used to live here, and I've been reaping the benefits ever since. So she bought it one time, and I'm still getting the harvest from it. I purchased the mint plant maybe like $2 or $3 5 years ago, planted it, and I get mint every year. So just buy it. It's no big deal. So that's everything that you need. So a couple of herbs that work well together. So you want to remember that when you're planting your herbs in one container together, personally for herbs, what I do like to do is I like to give them their own container each. So I have a container for rosemary, a container for parsley, a container, you know what I mean? That's my preferred thing if I'm doing containers. When I do a raised bed, I'm going to plant them all together, right? So this specifically for when you're planting them all together, you want them to have similar water requirements and similar light requirements. The light requirements for the herbs is not going to be as big of a deal, so you don't have to consider that. But mostly the the water requirements. So the plants that like moist soil the most are basil, cilantro, tarragon, and parsley. And the ones that prefer drier soil are going to be lavender, oregano, marjoram, rosemary, sage, and thyme. So herbs that I planted together that worked well, I will have a garden that has rosemary, lavender, thyme, oregano, sage, and tarragon. And those all grow perennial for me. So I planted it one time. Those don't like a lot of water. I planted them together. Rosemary, lavender, thyme, oregano, sage, and tarragon. You can put them all together in one bed, and you barely have to water them. Like barely. The first year when you plant them, water them more. Make sure like they're getting enough water. I would water them at least once a week, at least. And that's in my raised bed, in the container more. And then after that, eventually, once they're like really good and established, you never have to water them. You can just ignore them. They can just do what they do, get the rain, and live their life. And that's in Texas, so that's saying a lot. Dill, parsley, cilantro, and chives. Those go well together because they prefer the colder climates. They usually will not make it through a hot summer. Even like 80, 85 is getting too hot. They like it to be nice and cool, like 60s, 50s, 60s. Basil, calendula, chamomile, ginger, and turmeric. I like to grow those together because those all are my summer vegetables. So basically in the fall, I do my dill, parsley, cilantro, chives. And then in the summertime, I switch it out and I do my basil, calendula, chamomile, ginger, and turmeric. And I can plant those all in the same things. They all like moist soil. And then mint prefers to have its own container. You can put it in a bed or a container with other things. You can put in a container and other things. It probably is not going to take over in one summer. But if you want your mint to come back every single year, put it in its own thing because it will take over the whole bed and just be crazy. And I mean, it's nothing wrong with having a whole bed of mint, but for me, I only have limited space to grow in, so I can't have the mint taking up the whole bed. It's a bed hog. Fertilizing, that's the last thing on this. So herbs perform best with high quality soil and a high nitrogen fertilizer. A granular fertilizer will be applied once or twice per season, so the granular comes in a bag. A liquid fertilizer, which will come in a bottle, will be applied once per week. So usually what I will do is like when I plant and I'm putting the soil in the thing, I'll take a handful of the bagged fertilizer and I'll mix it into the top inch and then I'll plant the plant. And then I might give it the liquid fertilizer like once a month after that because that's it. That's all I do. In a container, this is especially important because every time that you water, you are essentially draining the nutrients from the pot. So that's basically all you have to do. That's the whole workshop, but I will share just a couple things that I do and I really like. I just love that this is like pajama party vibes. I'm literally having so much fun. But so special things that I do in my garden that feel good for me. I have a chlorine filter on all of my hoses, and that way my plants can get like the best purified, delicious, wonderful water without all the heavy metals and the chlorine and all that stuff. So I use a chlorine filter. I do compost teas and mycorrhiza, so I add beneficial bacteria and like fungi and things like that to the soil. And that's like an active service I do for my garden. I buy crystals and I put that in the soil. That's like a gift. I do all the love languages for my garden because I love my garden. So I buy crystals for them. I give them gifts and I bury them. That's like an offering. Like, this is what I'm going to give you so you can give me abundant harvest. I do sound healing. I have wind chimes. I talk to my plants. I tell them affirmations. I say, you are so beautiful. You're going to grow tall. You're going to produce so many fruits. You are so abundant. You are so productive. You are so beautiful. And I love you. And I tell them this all the time, every day. And I love them so much. And also, I spend quality time with my plants. I'm actually sitting with some of my plants right now, looking at them. They're so cute. And my meditation journal room is actually like also in my seed starting room. So I spend a lot of time with my plants. I do yoga near my plants. I meditate near my plants. I drink my tea in the garden with my plants. Like, I just spend time with my plants. So even if I wasn't doing the affirmations, they would know that I love them because I spend so much time with them. And like, when I'm around them, I'm in a really happy mood. And so I'm radiating that happiness and that love out to the plants. And oftentimes what feels really good, you know, I talk so much. So when I'm in my garden, sometimes I'm just completely silent and it feels really good. You know, sometimes I'm in there, I'm listening to audiobooks, I'm listening to online classes, YouTube videos. And sometimes I don't even take my phone out. I just go out there. It's just me and the plants. I'm listening to the birds and I'm just like in the zone, like no talking. And it feels good. It feels really, really good to just shut up sometimes. Saliva. So I don't do this all the time anymore because I start so many seeds. But okay, so for example, sometimes seeds will ask you to pre-soak. So I'll take like my beans or something. I'll put them in a cup of water to pre-soak and I'll spit in there because the interaction of my DNA with the plant and it like absorbs it before I plant it My ex, he told me that's what his grandma used to do, or she would actually put the seed under her tongue. And she had beautiful plantations. And she said the plant will know you and remember you, and it will heal you exactly as you need to be healed, because it knows what you need, because you guys have like bonded and shared DNA. Like, it's supposed to be like really deep and spiritual. So his grandma used to do that. I totally believe in that. I know it's kind of witchy, but I totally believe in that. So I do that. Or sometimes, like, when I'm using a watering can, I'll just spit in it and then I'll water my plants so that they can like really feel me. And same thing with like just walking around the backyard barefoot so that my feet are in the soil and I'm feeling it. Sometimes I garden without my gloves, like just to feel it. We do have fire ants here in Texas, so you can't always garden without gloves. It's not recommended. But, you know, I like to have a connection to my garden, basically. Composting, I know everyone can't do that, but if you have a house, I really, really recommend composting. I have a compost pile, which is just like a traditional compost. It's like this big bin thing. I've never had a compost tumbler. I don't really have room for it at my house. So yeah, but I heard those are wonderful. You could get a compost tumbler. But my all-time favorite method that I just started doing last year is in-ground composting. So basically, it's like this. I've even seen people do it with those 5-gallon paint buckets, okay? So it's like a bucket, right? And it has holes. And the reason that it has holes is so that the worms can get in from the soil, right? And it has holes in it, and it has a lid. And you bury it in the soil, but there's still a little bit up so you can do the lid. And then you add all your compost and your food scraps and things into it. And then the worms come in and like through those holes in the soil, and they help everything compost, and they're able to go in, eat the food, and go out back to the dirt. And then over time it turns into compost. I've been doing it. It works amazing because it's in the ground. It doesn't smell. It doesn't stink. The other one doesn't smell or doesn't stink anyways, but I don't put banana peels and apples and stuff into that one because I don't want rats. So the in the ground one, it has a lid so rodents can't get into it. And it's just my favorite way of composting. It's easy, simple. I take all my garden scrap or like my kitchen scraps when I'm done cooking, put them in a bag, and then I just go dump the bag into the thing, seal the lid. Perfect. And then I might mix it up with like a stick or a shovel every couple weeks. And then it turns into compost, and it's awesome. So I love that. Composting and then seed starting. So seed starting is really magical to me. It's my favorite thing. I can't cover it in this class because it's very in depth, and I mean it's kind of a lot. So maybe I'll eventually do a seed starting workshop, but not today. Someone's calling me. Anyways. Yeah, I'm gonna have a sip of my drink. I've been talking a lot. Tastes a little funny. Okay, yeah. So some special things that I do with my harvest. You want to harvest once the plant has matured. Don't harvest too early, but when it's time, harvest often, like daily recommended. So for example, if I plant a little basil plant, I don't want to start harvesting it immediately, but once it's grown a few inches, I'll snip off the top and then let it grow some more. And then once it's grown more, I'll snip off some more. And then once it gets bigger, you're going to start harvesting every day, every single day. Every time I see a little new leaf, which is like every day, I'll just pick it off. And then always eating basil. And I'll just put it in my water. Sometimes I'll just leave it on the table to dry, and I can use it as dried basil. Sometimes I cut it up and eat it with fruit. I just find a way to eat it. Infused waters are best prepared the night before so that the herbs have time to diffuse into the water, obviously. But I drink infused waters every day. Today I was just at a restaurant, a really cute, nice restaurant in Dallas. And they actually had rosemary water at all the tables, and it was so good. It was so delicious, and I was just so happy to have it. So I put herbs in all of my water, all of it. This is actually coconut water, and it has mint in it. Like, there's always going to be herbs in my water. Soups and stews, grab a handful, throw it in there. Throw it in there. There's so many medicinal benefits. Herb bombs for bathing. So I have these little like tea bags so that I don't just have like flower petals going down my drain all the time. So I have these little tea bags, and then I'll just go like get flower petals throughout the garden, put them in a bag, and then I'll bathe with them when I do like my salt baths. And then infused oils, kind of the same thing as the infused waters. You literally can just like get a jar, put the flowers. I let the flowers dry first. So you get the flowers, let the flowers dry either in a dehydrator or just like on a paper plate in the window in the sun. Let it dry. Once it's dry, I put them in the bag, or I'll put it in the jar. I'll pour some whatever oil I want to use, olive oil, whatever oil. And then let it diffuse. The oil takes a little bit longer than the water, so I would let it diffuse for at least a couple days, and then you just start using it. You just start using it. My favorite oil to do with that is the calendula or the rose. So I do rose oil or calendula oil. Those are my faves. I eat it raw. The benefits of eating these herbs raw are great, amazing, wonderful. You can still get those raw benefits from the infused waters, but there's so much more if you just eat like a handful of it. Especially parsley, like a parsley salad, it's like 10 times more nutritional, has more antioxidants, has more phytonutrients than lettuce. So just grab a handful and eat it just like that. You can burn it instead of sage. So for example, I usually burn rosemary. I actually have some in the window. I don't feel like grabbing it, but I burn rosemary instead of sage. I don't have to go buy sage. That's what I do. And then also for gifting, like, yeah, I'll just give people herbs. Like I actually had a date, and he had texted me before the date that he was like feeling a little under the weather. He was feeling a little sick. So I grabbed some oregano, which is a really wonderful antiviral that I use when I'm sick. It's really good. So I grabbed like a handful of it, put it in a plastic bag, and I took it to the date. And I thought he really appreciated it. And it, it was just something nice and sweet to do. Or like the rosemary bundles I make, I dry the rosemary, I tie it up, and I burn that instead of sage, and I'll gift it to people who I know are like into burning sage and that kind of like weird stuff. And it's fun. And you get to share like a little bit of what you've grown. And literally I have so much stuff that I grow that I can't possibly use it all. So I love giving it away, and I love if someone else can use it, because it's like, I don't want it to go to waste, and I want other people to be inspired to grow their own gardens, and like, it just feels really good. It feels really good. And then last but not least, is the last thing. This was a little long, but I'm so happy I did this. Like, this has just been so fun. My all-time favorite herbs to grow are basil, because basil loves Texas summers and it tastes amazing. I literally put it on everything. And this year, because I love basil so much, there's actually a ton of different kinds of basil, so I'm experimenting with like 10 different kinds of basil. But the traditional sweet basil is my favorite, but I'm doing some other ones too. Calendula, that's my favorite one for like skincare. It's really good for the skin. There's a lot of medicinal benefits, and it's also a beautiful flower, and it grows really easily all summer long. Rose, I love roses. I grew up on roses. My grandmother had like 13 rose bushes at her house when I was growing up, and it was just a beautiful thing. She kind of looked at her garden as like her altar, like a place of prayer. And whenever like a family member would die, she would dedicate one of the rose bushes to them. I think that's how she ended up with so many. And so the roses just really have a significance to me. And also I think it's my favorite flower. Like whenever I see them, they're just so beautiful, classic, timeless, just like me. Like, you can't go wrong with roses. And of course, I love all flowers. I love flowers, I love colors, I love plants, I love all the things. But I think that rose is just my favorite because they're so beautiful. And now that I'm super into gardening, I've actually seen that like there's so many different kinds of roses, so many colors, so many varieties. Like, there's so many roses to grow. So yeah, I'm obsessed with roses, and I also like to use them in my bath. I go to this Mediterranean restaurant where they actually have this rose water and you drink it, and it's really good. So I might try a recipe for that this summer. I think I'm going to challenge myself to try a rose water this summer because it tastes really good, and I love roses. Oregano. Mexican oregano specifically is my absolute favorite. It's like super succulent. It's super potent. Like when you smell it, it's like so intense. And that's the one I like to put in my water, and it's like potent. It's the real deal. Like that stuff, I can't eat that one. I've never tried to just take a bite because it just smells like it's gonna be spicy. Dandelion, you can use dandelion to make teas for liver support. Dandelion is really good. I've also seen people just eat dandelion, but I personally don't. I have never done that. Rosemary, I talked a little bit about rosemary. Like, I love rosemary. Sage, I love sage because it's a perennial and it'll come back every single year. Sweet mint, easy to grow, comes back every year. Perfect in waters. You can make cocktails for your friends. Like, it's so nice always having mint on hand. Mojitos on deck. Like, we got mojitos all summer long. Like, I love having fresh mint. Ginger and turmeric. Also, I don't know about every climate, but in Texas, I think you can grow it anywhere. No, because you need a long season. But in Texas, it grows super duper easy. You can sprout it in the house. Just wrap it in a wet paper towel and a plastic bag. It'll sprout. Put it in the soil as soon as the last freeze. It'll start growing, grow all summer long, and then before the last freeze or whenever it starts getting cool, you harvest it. Like, it's just so easy. And the leaves look really like tropical and pretty, so it's kind of like aesthetic too. Chives, perennial, and also they taste good. You can use them on everything. Like, I'll just grab a handful and just like literally cut them with scissors and put them on everything. And then dill. Dill is my absolute favorite, and also dill has a lot of medicinal benefits that people don't know about too. It's used for many female issues, including milk production and menstrual cramps. And it's also so yummy. I put it on my omelets. I put it on literally everything. I put it in my ground beef. Like, I love dill. So that's all I have. Thank you guys for attending my herb workshop / pajama party. I love you guys. If one person decides to grow something from this, I'll be so happy, so ecstatic. But I just wanted to share my heart. This is like, it's my passion. Like, this is just what I love to do. So if I can connect to someone else who also loves this, like, I feel like I'm really, really blessed. So that's all I have to say. I love you guys so much. Peace.